power to do that. Hey, ladies, how are you today? Wholesale Hotties joining you from all across the country. Today we've got me, Sharon Lee Smith. I'll be your MC this evening. We've got Kate Gomes. We've got Monique Fell. We've got Donda Molnex joining us in just a couple of minutes. And our special guest today, April Elias or Elias. How do you say it? Is it Elias?
You got it right the first time.
Cool. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Glad to see you here. So tell us about you. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? What's going on?
Okay, so I live in Delaware, and we are also building a property in Portugal. So likely I'll be spending more time there than I already do. So that's something that's kind of newer for us. And for the last, professionally, for the last, 20 plus years, I've been in talent acquisition. So it's executive search, basically headhunting. And I work for a management consulting firm in that capacity right now. And as far as real estate goes, I'm newer to real estate investing just the last couple of years. I recently completed a fix and flip that we received the cash offer on, which was super exciting after 7 days on market.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. This time of year. Yeah. And so I was a little nervous about the timing of the listing, but it worked out perfectly. So that closes December 5th. We do our real estate investing as a team. There's just a lot going on. And a lot of the deals that we end up pursuing are opportunistic in a lot of ways. And they're just from networking. We do make calls, pull lists, make calls based on certain criteria and certain strategies in markets. But that's it in a nutshell.
So is your house you're building in Portugal, is that the same one that you did sub to, or is that a completely separate property?
That's separate. So we acquired a property 2 years ago, and it has 3 lots of land. It's 3 lots of land, and it's the immediate neighbor to my brother. So what took us to Portugal was essentially my brother, and his work took him to Portugal a little over 5 years ago. And so we bought the lots of land next to him once they became available. And it's taken 2 years to get this far just because of COVID and not everyone returning to work. And it's just a different pace of the way that you get things done in Portugal. So it's not fast. It was definitely a slower play than I realized when we started, but now we know a lot more and can move a little bit more quickly. So that's new construction of 3 houses. So our house, my brother's going to have a second house, and then we're going in 50-50 on an Airbnb because it's still a hot spot for short-term rentals. And then the sub 2 is about 30 minutes away in a town called Cascais, which is like the Riviera or Beverly Hills of Portugal.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So is that in southern Portugal, or kind of where on the map is it?
It's right in the middle. So we're a little bit north of Lisbon. So when we fly in, it's in Lisbon, and we're within, a 30-minute drive. And the Cascais house, which is the one that's a mix of sub 2 and seller finance, that's new construction, and it's a finish and flip because it was someone who did new construction. It's another American. They got overwhelmed. They didn't get aligned with the appropriate people to get things done, not only in time, but on budget. And so we think there was a little bit of scamming going on. So she didn't necessarily get what she paid for just yet. And as soon as we get the CO, which it qualifies to get that, then we'll go ahead and we'll start finishing. And a lot of the work that needs to be done is the exterior hardscape. So it's on it's almost an acre. So it's like 0.75 acres. So there's a lot of land that we have to hardscape and deal with. So that's where most of the money is going to be spent. And then a little redesign inside because the kitchen's a little, doesn't flow the way, that most people would like it. So we're going to work with that too.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's fun. And while I was there, I also, because the real estate market in Portugal has just recently become legal to do seller finance and subject to within the last year.
That is a government rule before that they didn't allow it, or
well, it just wasn't a thing. People didn't do it typically, and I don't know if it wasn't necessarily against the law, but within the last year, it's become more popular, at least the seller finance piece. And the way that we figured out the subject to piece was possible was we took the subject to paperwork that we use here and we provided it to our attorney. And she said, this is possible. We just need to say this a little bit differently in Portugal, but it's absolutely possible. And that's how we accomplished that. But what's exciting is a lot of the properties on market there, even off market, but a lot of the properties on market, 70% of them are 1991 or older build. So there's a lot of opportunity to fix and flip and to revitalize some areas and to do some really fun projects. So I actually have an investor trip that I planned while I was there. I secured the venue, the transportation, and all of the attorneys, our immigration attorney, our attorney that handles our real estate stuff, also tax accountant to deal with worldwide income. And so all of these things are in place, and I'll be hosting that in April. So I'm super excited about that.
That's amazing.
April for April.
I want to know more about that for sure. I know like one of my other friends in Astro, she and her beau moved over to Spain and then got a 3-year digital nomad visa and then is just traveling around Europe for 3 years on the, and that it sounds like Portugal may have something similar where we can just go and invest and enjoy life.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead, tell me more about.
Yeah. So if you do that, so that you're right with the digital nomad visa, you could also do an entrepreneur visa, which allows you to do something similar. It just depends on your personal situation as to what visa aligns best for you. But it's fairly easy to do. It's fairly inexpensive. And it's when you invest in any country in the EU. So there's 26 countries. Spain is one of them. So when you invest, like for us, if we invest in Portugal, say, we create a lot of value and we're able to have some income to do some other things with, we can do that in any other EU country. It'd be like if I made money here in Delaware and I wanted to invest in Florida, it's similar to crossing state lines. There are some nuances, but in general, that's what you can do. So I could take that money and I could say, I would really like to buy a place in Italy, or I'd like to buy a place in Greece, Germany, wherever. There's a lot of places that you can expand to within the EU countries and move about pretty freely with the visa, wherever you obtain the visa from, whatever country you obtained it from.
And do you think there's opportunity in every country for sub 2 and seller finance, or is that specific to Portugal?
I only know about Portugal and the other countries that I'm exploring at the moment, just because we have boots on the ground and people who are citizens of the country. Greece is one of them, because it's very easy to get 360 water views in Greece because there's just so much water surrounding like island type of land. So the other thing is it's much, it's a lot less expensive in a lot of ways. So you could really create an amazing space or an amazing type of either retreat or vacation home or a full-time home, whatever it is that you'd like to do. And then the other one is, Berlin, Germany. And the reason for Berlin, Germany is because there's actually another student in sub 2. It's a father-son that they have dual citizenship in Germany and in the US. But now they're living in Germany because the daughter is going to school in Berlin, and it hasn't been completely brought back since World War II destruction. And
since the wall fell.
Yeah, there's a huge population. There's a lot of demand, and housing is an issue, and affordable housing is an issue. So we're exploring that kind of passively and opportunistically as things come up. And then the other one's Italy, just because I haven't had a bad meal in Italy, and why not?
Dude, I have Sicilian heritage, and I love to move to Italy. Donda, you had some questions. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I'm just curious, being a foreigner investing being an American investing in a foreign country, I know you can't buy in all the different countries. So it's really interesting to hear about Portugal, that it allows us as U.S. citizens to buy there. What are the tax implications, though, as a citizen? How does that work when you're, I just know, Pace's one of his friends, Jerry Norton, he moves to, what is it, guys? Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico.
Yeah, for the tax. Is there tax benefits for you, or are you living here in the States? And how does that all work? Do you have any?
I live here in the States full time, and I'll continue to live here in the States full time. It's just I'll have longer, more extended trips in Portugal. And so the tax implications, I should say, I don't know that there's necessarily advantages, but for instance, my property taxes are super low right now, and they'll continue to be. And if you're earning income in both countries, you have to consider your worldwide income. So you need to make sure that you have an accountant here in the US. So my US CPA, and then also an accountant they don't have CPAs in Portugal, but an accountant that has that international experience, which they typically do because we're so close to Lisbon, and just there's a lot of expat activity and things going on, and a lot of them are US citizens. So it's easy to get access to resources that you need. A lot of major law firms and accounting firms, they're just right there in downtown Lisbon, just like the big fours, all of them are there. So you have access to the things that you need to make sure that you get the appropriate tax strategy for your situation and tax advisory, which is super important. And there are ways to, like, well, what's interesting about Portugal too is there are ways to, instead of like here, we have to do something with our real estate income in a fairly short amount of time. Depending on the situation, you could take up to 36 months to do something with that same income. It just depends.
Nice.
And each individual property and situation is considered, there's just different potentials for it. And the thing that I do like about creating appreciation in Europe is, 200,000 euro is basically like 250,000 US here. So if I create 200,000 in euro, when I go to cash it out here, it just adds a little bit more, and it can offset some of
The
those
exchange
costs.
rate is good. Yeah.
Situations. But yeah, we just use professionals that know what they're doing and know what they're talking about. And we're early on in the journey to where we haven't had to experience a tax season with the sub, because the sub 2 is newer the last few months. So this tax season will be our first tax season with that type of experience.
So is there capital gains? I mean, do you have to pay capital gains there and here? Did
yes.
they have it too as well? Okay.
Yeah. And the buyer always pays the full transfer tax. And apparently that's not negotiable.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in some situations, what we have found is when we're looking at properties is sometimes the best option might be to set up some type of lease option with assignable buying rights, because then you can get control of the property. You can, do all of the renovations, make all the investments. It's kind of like a novation, sort of, but it's a little bit different. It's just a little bit different. And you can avoid that. If I acquire it, I have to pay the transfer tax, and then the next person acquires it, and it can get really hefty with the higher priced properties. So, but there is a way to kind of be more of a
be creative.
Be creative. Yeah, for sure.
You're the pioneer of creative finance in Portugal.
Yeah, and you can wholesale. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then, when you get funds, did you bring in PML that from the States? People investing with you out there, or are you just doing it all with your family? Is your brother, I think you mentioned?
Yeah. So we're self-funding. Like I bought my land cash. They won't, in Portugal, they don't finance land to foreigners. So I had to pay cash. So I just wired the cash to the seller. So there's no escrow too, which
that's scary.
Yeah. Well, we figured out that we can set up the same type of arrangement that we have here. It's just they call it different things. So the instruments exist to recreate how we settle and close here. We can recreate that in Portugal. It's just not customary. And so, for example, my brother happened to know the person that we were buying the land from because he bought his house from him 2 years prior. And he was a former lead attorney of, a huge company. He was the lead attorney for Europe for Procter & Gamble. And he lives in a castle down the street and has tons of properties. So I wasn't really worried about him skating off somewhere. Because he was a reputable person.
Thanks for sharing that, Parker.
Yeah, you can just buy a castle. It's kind of cool. And so I wired him the money, but I was still super nervous because it was, it was 6 figures. And I was like, man, I hope he
right.
And of course he did. Everything was fine. And the other thing that's kind of interesting in Portugal that I found is when you go to transfer the property into your name, they read all of the documents to you in Portuguese, whether you understand it or not.
Oh, no.
And so you're just sitting there like, yeah, I guess so. Here's my passport.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I've actually started learning Spanish just so I can, so I can serve the Spanish community here, but also so I can be traveling in Europe very soon.
Yeah. You drive right into Spain. You can drive right into Spain from Portugal.
I love it.
Spain is the only country that borders Portugal.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. And Portuguese and Spanish is very similar too, is my understanding. So,
yes, ish, kind of some of the words are exactly the same, but some of the ways that they structure their sentences, you almost have to unlearn a little bit of the way you speak Spanish to speak Portuguese sometimes.
Yeah. They say Portuguese is like a mix of French and Spanish. And I was in Portugal once and I speak some Spanish, but I was trying to communicate with the Portuguese in Spanish because they didn't speak English and I didn't speak Portuguese. So we were both speaking broken Spanish and we got by okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And sometimes sign language works too. You just you're like, I want 2 of those.
Yes. Exactly.
That's what I say all the time.
Yeah. April, I have 2 more questions for you about that. Number 1, are you near surfing? And number 2, if you are, can I get on your buyers list for seller finance deals you find?
Absolutely. So Edie Sarah it's a surf reserve. It's the only surf reserve in Europe.
Oh,
and
wow.
Oh my gosh, Kate.
The whole reason I love Portugal is because of the surfing. So I come from a family who has like generations of surfers. Everybody's coastal for the most part. And so that was the big draw. And my brother picked Portugal, and specifically the town that we're in, because it's known for its surfing. It's only an hour south of Nazaré, where the 100-foot waves are.
Yes,
Not that anybody would be surfing 100-foot waves, but the surf is really good. And so it's amazing from that aspect. And the big wave season is in the winter, so it's actually really cold when but in the summer, when you'd want to more likely be surfing, it's regular.
Okay. So I need to come to your April retreat.
Yeah, for sure.
Check it out.
We already have boards and everything, or you could rent boards. You don't have to bring a board. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
That'd be fun to go stay at your Airbnb there and check it out.
Yes. Yeah. Once we get that done, I mean, we were out there this last time because you have to be in person to do certain things. And I have to go back again because we are applying for financing for the new construction. So we are getting a new construction loan for that. That's how we're funding it. And I have to come back because one of the very cool things that they do that I wish they did here was I get a medical exam. And when I get the medical exam, they take a life insurance policy. Well, my husband and I both, we have to get a medical exam. They take a life insurance policy out on us. And in the event something happens to us, the bank cashes in the life insurance policy, pays off the loan 100%, and the property automatically goes to my kids. Just automatically.
Nice. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
How often do you do that medical exam?
I don't know. That's a good question. They do only lend for a certain amount of time, so based on your age. So they do 40-year mortgages, but I'm too old for a 40-year mortgage. So would not give me a 40-year mortgage.
Well, old enough. I mean,
that's so funny. Seriously, they base it on your age?
Oh yeah,
no way.
I think I only qualify for a 25-year mortgage based on their standards, and so
you are not old either.
Well, they're just the way that they approach everything is really interesting because it's almost like we've got it wrong in a lot of ways because they prioritize culture, they prioritize family. And for instance, the finance office, which is the place where you can go pay your property taxes or anything that you owe for that type of bill. And they were just straight up closed Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. No reason. They were like, we're just not coming in. And that's just, and government offices, everything. And because the country, I think it's 90% Catholic, maybe 98% Catholic. And what that means is they have 40 holidays. They celebrate every saint. Each town celebrates a different saint and or some of the same, but it's very festive year round. So there's a lot of food, dance, culture, just really cool things going on all the time.
Just fun all the time. Do they drink like the Irish?
No. I've been to Ireland, and actually I'm mostly Irish, and no, I don't drink like that, but no, they do. I would say most people drink with meals, and most of Europe is like that.
Yeah.
So it's
more wines.
Yeah. So it's more wine, more, vino tinto, just red wines. And the wines are fantastic and they're very inexpensive. Like they're really nice wines. And like you go into the grocery store and you see wines for like €2 and you're like, that's a headache. Like that looks like a headache. And it's not. It's nice. There's no preservatives and it's just a little bit cleaner and you don't have all of the yuck feel.
I guess you're going to be bringing back wine for all of us, huh, April?
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Absolutely.
Order now, Monique.
Yeah. I'm rethinking my whole real estate game plan now.
Yeah, right? Me too.
Yeah. And this wasn't the plan, right? This wasn't the plan. It just kind of happened. And I was like, well, we're just going to roll with it. We're just going to see where it goes, figure it out. We have enough resources to get stuff done. And so you asked a question earlier about investors in Portugal and how, we were getting the funding for that. So for our Cascais, we do need €200,000 to finish and then flip it. And so what we're in the process of also doing is working out how we can make sure everyone is protected. So that's how we learned that even though they don't really have like title and escrow in the way that we do it, they do have those instruments, like I said earlier, to where you still do title like we would, and then you set up, they call it a trustee account. So it's an attorney trustee account, and you can set the similar rules up, like escrow instructions. And they have promissory notes, they have deeds of trust or mortgages. You can put all of those instruments exist and you can pull them together in a way that protects you. And I'm also further exploring if there's an agreement between two Americans, can they cross collateralize a U.S. asset? And it looks like the answer is yes. So if I said, hey, I would like 200, do you want to partner with me on this as a PMP or a PML and send me 200 or 250,000 that I'm going to, deploy for a European finish and flip, but go ahead and cross collateralize something that I have that has value that would keep you covered. So it looks like that's a possibility for sure.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
Now, when you Airbnb, I know we have one here in the States, and we have like a housekeeper, and we have our little, go-to guy and stuff. Has it been hard, or have you started looking for those people? Guys, I know you said it's not quite up and ready, but is it hard to find help for those kind of things, or is it pretty easy there?
Well, it's a mix. And I would say, so for housekeeping, we do have a housekeeper identified. And we also have a restaurant there. That's the other thing that I didn't mention yet. So my brother started a food truck there because my sister-in-law is half Mexican and there was no Mexican food. And she's like, that's not going to fly. I was like, I get you. I could eat Mexican every day. Like, you don't have to explain the reason for the food truck or the Mexican restaurant. So what they did was they started it as a food truck, and then they went ahead and they pivoted and sold the food truck and took that business into a location in the village, in the little surfing village, which is like the coolest little village from the 1700s, but it's all like yoga and surf and just all kinds of like cool things. Acai bowls on every corner. And so we have the restaurant there. And my brother, because he's an investment banker, and there was investment interest in California Tacos. That's the name of the restaurant here in the U.S. So we opened one here by me for 2 years, and my husband ran that for a bit. And we just, we signed our lease in September 2019. We're supposed to open in March 2020, which didn't happen. No. Didn't open till like November. We took a huge hit on that, and it's just because it was COVID, and we just made some mistakes with purchasing the kitchen instead of leasing it and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we buttoned that up and said, we'll just double down on the Portugal restaurant and maybe open one in Lisbon too, because that could be really successful. So I say all that to say it's kind of been a challenge getting staff for the restaurant. But my brother has someone who does his pool, cleans his house, washes his windows, things like that. And so he has a little pool of, kind of staff to do things like that. And because the properties are an immediate neighbor to my brother, he's boots on the ground all of the time. And my sister-in-law's there all of the time. And my niece and nephew, who are both adults and they're both married, they're young adults. My nephew married a Portuguese girl, which is great because if we need to get any traction with Portuguese services or whatever, and they're like, we don't like your American accent, which is totally possible. We just have them go in on our behalf and get things done. So we have a lot of that already kind of in place. And I don't see any issues with being able to find that type of staffing support that we need to keep things like running and smooth.
Oh, that's exciting. What are the rates? What are the nightly rates there? Are they comparable to like places around here? Is it cheaper there? I know we have a friend in Bali right now, and he just sent a video, and he's like $7 a night or something.
Yeah,
it's not quite that cheap. It's not quite that, but it is. I think it's a little bit cheaper. I mean, for a beach town that's it's a highly desirable location with beautiful beaches, great waves, just environment in general. I mean, you could get, I want to say it's around €200 a night, and you can still get, well, they call it a sea view. They don't call it an ocean view. You can get sea views, 200, all, 200, 300, 400 a night. It's like a regular hotel room here, right? Like that's what a hotel costs here. So, and just a regular one, not even like a super fancy one. And you can really get a good like bang for your buck, I would say.
Can you tell me the name of the town again? I want to write that down.
It's called Ericeira. So it's not pronounced like it's spelled. So it's ERCRE. I have to type it out. ECERIA. ECER. And
Syria?
Ericeira.
But ECERA.
It's like Eric. ERIC. It's like Eric.
ERIC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's ERICEIRA.
Oh. Ericeira.
Do you find that the houses over there, the structure is similar to ours, and the design and the way that you would put that house together on the outside and on the inside? Or is there a lot more cultural stuff that is completely so different and almost like foreign to what maybe you or I would normally look for or put together?
It's totally different. It's not stick and drywall anywhere. There is drywall, but it's all concrete and block. Because there's issues with mold, because there's a lot of moisture in the air. So they do a lot of types of
like Florida
block. Right. Yeah, they'll wrap the block. It's called like a kaput is what they wrap it in. And there's it's different structure. They use a lot of steel to go ahead and do the framing. And so it's a lot more, just rugged materials that can withstand any type of, anything from the like moisture. It can withstand earthquakes. Not that I'm aware of any earthquakes happening there, but it's such a solid structure that apparently it can withstand like
fires, floods.
Oh yeah, for sure. Fires. Yeah. All of that
makes sense why you can buy a castle.
Yeah.
Everything's made out of stone and brick and block. That's cool.
Yeah.
So basements are a thing or not a thing?
My brother has a partial basement. It's a walkout. I'm just trying to think of all of the homes I've been in. I guess it depends on where you're at as it relates to sea level, but I haven't been in any homes to where there's like a full-on basement unless it's kind of like tucked in a hill a little bit. Lots of mountains, lots of castles, lots of ruins. So, I made an offer on the ruin. So I was like, just for the heck of it, I was like, well, let's see if we'll take €10,000 for this ruin. And so I haven't heard back on it yet. I have a call with that agent on Monday. We're meeting over Zoom. But I was like, if I can get this ruin, like
Did
this
you
would
say
be
€10,000 for a piece of property with a ruin on it?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna see. Like,
Wow.
He says with an age with it.
What are you going to do with it?
well, so what I could do is I could because they do have like ADUs and stuff out there. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's just right down the street from my house. I was like, I'll figure it out if I get it, or if it's close to the road, so it can likely plug in to public utilities and sewer and all that stuff fairly easily. It's not like out in the rural areas, because most of the population is actually coastal, because most of Portugal, when you go inland, is very just rugged and mountainous, and there's just not a lot of infrastructure there. So this isn't a part of town to where there is infrastructure existing. So it might be easy to plug stuff in. I don't know.
And Europeans I think are into camper vans a lot too. So maybe it could just be a parking spot for them.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say, worst case, I'll let people park their RVs there, or like van life is a thing. I mean, and people have some of the most legit vans I have ever seen, and I saw a bunch of them this last week. They're like, it's a thing. It's a thing there.
They probably spend more on a camper vans than they do a castle.
Yes, they probably do.
Well, you have your mom, so you have some boys too. Are they interested in going out there with you and hanging out in Portugal and, being a part of that process?
They love it. So yes, we have 5 kids. We have 4 boys, 1 girl. My oldest is 30, and his wife is a TC on our team. She was one of the first top tier TCs. And then my other son, he got out of the military, and he's getting his certification to work on aircraft. He worked on Black Hawks in the military, and now he wants to work on commercial aircraft. And I was like, okay, cool. You can, when we get a plane, you can make sure it runs, it flies around. And then my daughter's a nurse, and she participates as a PML. So she participated as a PML on the flip that I have with Pace that we settle on December 5th. So she is one of the investors in that, which is great. And she's all excited and can't wait to get into her next deal, because, she lent money out, and she makes, a good amount of money back, lending it out for a short amount of time. And now she's like, I want to do more. So that's exciting to see. And she didn't have to lift a hammer or do anything. She was just like, put my money to work. Like, I like it this way. And then my 2 youngest boys, which are 19 and 20, they are both in the business with us. So my 19-year-old, he's evolving to figure out real estate to help us with our social media. So he'll be our social media channel manager. He does good on YouTube already, and he's monetized, but it's getting him to like understand and be able to help with the content around real estate. And so my 20-year-old actually does calls. So he calls agents and he calls sellers every single day. So he's one of our lead sources that helps. We're looking at 3 properties tomorrow as a result of his efforts. And then we're also looking at a portfolio of 9 properties that are local here, just like local to my house. And so it's a result of his efforts for sure. And then he made friends with Jerry Norton's son. That my 2 youngest boys made friends with Jerry Norton's son Johnny when we were at community camp in July and at Pace's house. So cool. They became friends, and then they have their own little accountability Zoom. I don't want to call it little. It's a Zoom. It's a Zoom that they have that they recorded as a podcast. Yeah. And so they round robin call sellers, and they crack jokes, and they just talk about like what happened on the call, and they'll say things like, I know I got that agent when she's calling me honey, and they're funny.
And all you have to do is have 5 kids, and you have a built-in business there.
Well, where do you live? I think I missed that at the beginning. Sorry.
Delaware.
Oh, Delaware. Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I have access to a lot of airports.
Yeah. How long a flight for you to get to Portugal?
So on the way, so I drive to Newark, New Jersey, because I like to fly out of the New York area because there's a lot of flight options. It's a lot less expensive, and I can control my destiny. Because if I flew out of Philly, it always has a layover, and I'm like, man, I don't want my luggage to get lost. So we do the direct flight from there. And I just want to control my destiny for those 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so it's about like 6 hours and 45 minutes on the way there. It's similar to if I fly to LA. right? So it's 6 hours and 45 minutes there, straight into Lisbon. And then it's a little bit longer on the way back just because of the, the
wind,
stream and the wind and stuff. But it's all ocean. It's a total ocean flight.
Right? That's not bad though.
Being in a little tiny canyon going over the ocean for 6 hours, 7 hours.
Didn't I hear something about a property you invested in that gave you quite a large return?
Yeah.
Can you share that story with us a little bit?
Yeah, that's the log cabin. So that's the one that we close on December 5th. Now, again, that was opportunistic. And it's so crazy because all of the things that end up being just really great deals, all of them are by water. And I didn't say, oh, let me pull this list and find this log cabin on the water. It was just, again, it was just through conversations, and we got this off market. And so we acquired it for $300,000. And it's in a community that has deeded water access, like private access. So you got a private beach, you can put your boat there. There's a dry dock, all the things. And it's on 3 acres. And it's a very small HOA. There's only 6 homes in this particular area, and it's highly desirable. But it's part of a larger community. But it's highly desirable stuff. Almost never goes on market. And if something's sold, the neighbors usually figure it out amongst themselves. And the immediate neighbor went on market in April. It was under contract in a day for $1.1 million.
Wow.
And so we have 1 more acre than they do, but they have a lot more square footage because they include their guest house in the square footage. And ours is a log cabin, theirs is not. But still, it's a good comp to be your neighbor. And it has water, like peekaboo water views. So we put an offer in on this property, and I was so nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, it's a log cabin. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing because I've never worked on a log cabin. It's 2 stories and it's 2,600 square feet. And it was a 2-bedroom, 3 full bath with a full basement, which I'm like, that's weird that there's 3 full bathrooms and 2 bedrooms, and it had a loft. And so we go ahead and we put the offer in. It takes a while to get the response because I don't think we were the highest offer, but for whatever reason, when we were at Squad Up Summit, we got the call saying, we accepted your offer. And I was like, that's my sign to join Owners Club. So I was like, no, I'm signing up for sure. And so I was paying attention to the signs from the universe. And so we acquired it. And, I was like, well, I don't know how, I'm going to necessarily come up with the 300,000 myself. Let's figure it out. So I contacted Abraham. Abraham put me in touch with Julian. Julian, he was helping me out. He's been amazing. He's a big part of the reason we actually acquired it too, because we had to last minute do a pivot. But
that's Julian from Owners Club, right? The lender. Yeah.
Yes. You need to be his friend. Awesome. He's amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, but because it was a log cabin, it was rural. It was kind of like a weird property from that standpoint. Right. I went with a hard money lender that another sub-2 student had referred to me, but they hadn't used them, and they were local, and they're like, oh, no problem, we'll do a log cabin. Because Julian's like, it might take me a little bit just because it's a different kind of property. And I was like, I didn't want to put him through having to do all that work. And I was like, this other one said that they would, and no problem. Yeah. So what I didn't know is I think that they were a traditional lender trying to pivot to be a hard money lender, because they asked me for my, my W-2s, my tax returns, all that. I was fine. You can have it. And they approved me based on that. And the condition was that I had to have enough liquid cash to start the renovation. I needed to have at least, $50,000 or $60,000 liquid to start the renovation. And I was like, sure, no problem. And so we get through it, and they are all of a sudden, they were like, well, now we don't, now we're rethinking the structure. Now we want this big chunk of money down. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, we need $164,000.
Oh, nice.
I was like, are you kidding me? And so, but it was already through the process, a good part through the process.
And that's very unusual, right? Normally when you're 2 weeks in and you've given them all the information, they don't change like that, right?
Yeah. Which is, and Molly's like, they're very elementary. She said, I've never worked with any hard money lender like this. And so I had to pivot. And so my husband was like, well, just ask Pace if he's interested in the deal. So I did. And he said, run it by Bo and Molly. Spoke to Bo and Molly. They're like, sure, we'll do it. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's go. And so Pace is my 50% partner on my LLC. So I added him to my LLC, added him to my checking account, all the things, because I opened a new LLC in Maryland for this property specifically, because I didn't want to do the register as a foreign LLC in that state, and because the taxes between the two were just too much. So it was just easier to do that. And so we go ahead and they're like, okay, I let them know that Pace is now my 50% partner. He's going to be the one bringing the 165 ridiculous amount to the table that you're asking for on a 300,000 acquisition. And I was like, I still have my renovation, liquid cash, and we can go. So they're like, all right, well, send me your new operating agreement, send me your JV agreement, send me all these things. So I sent them, and they're like, okay, well, we really don't like that, Pace is, because he gets 50% of the profit, which is totally fine. And he also gets 12% on the 164. And they're like, well, and it also, we really don't like that he's going to hold like a silent second, because he said he's going to have a second position and just not record it. And so I was like, what do you care? Like, you're in first position for 55% of the, like, what do you even care? Like,
they're very elementary, like you said.
And so, but they removed it from the JV agreement. And so they're like, okay, now everything looks good. We get to the closing table. I'm not kidding you. I was sitting there so nervous because Pace's money is wired in. I have my, cashier's check that they had me make for the closing cost and the extra taxes and all this stuff. We all signed. So there are 3 heirs. There's 3 people in this that have already signed. One's a mobile notary. 2, I'm sitting across the table from. They're handing me keys and doorknobs that they bought, and this special painting of the log cabin, when it was like all of this like memorabilia that's associated with the log cabin, and they're beautiful gifts, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, because I knew that the hard money lender had not sent their money yet. And I was sitting there like, are you kidding me? So I'm texting them. They're like, send me the septic inspection again. And I'm like, what?
Oh, no.
I'm sending these things. And then like an hour goes by and we're all sitting there and I'm like sweating bullets. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? And the heirs or the sellers, they're like, well, we have to go. Like, we have things to do. And I'm like, well, if you're okay with it, I will. We'll have the money wired, or if you prefer a check, because one of them really wanted a check. I was like, I will deliver it to you. Like, I will bring you the check directly. And they're like, yeah, sure. No problem. That's fine. We sat in the office until 4:30. The hard money lender calls and goes, April, I have bad news. We're not going to be able to do this because we can't unsee that Pace's intention is to hold a silent second.
Wow.
So,
Oh my gosh.
Second. And so I'm sitting there. I felt like I was just absorbing all of in the entire room. And I didn't want to startle anyone. And it was just me and then, the title and escrow person. And then my daughter was sitting there too, because she participated as a PML. And I just hung up and I was like, well, it's not going to happen today. I said, but I have 24 hours because, before this, I had to extend the close of escrow because of the hard money lender asking us for all this stuff, right? And the sellers were already annoyed, and something told me to ask for Friday. I was like, let's just extend the close of escrow to Friday. They're like, no, we really want to settle on Thursday. I don't want it to be drug out again. Let's settle on Thursday. And I was like, well, it's the end of the week. Like, I insisted on Friday. And I don't even know why I insisted on Friday, but I needed till Friday. And so I sat there and I said to, Patty at Title and Escrow, I was like, well, unfortunately, they're not going to be wiring the money. I was like, we're just going to have to pick this up tomorrow. And she's like, do you want me to send Pace's money back? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no. I was like, and I got my daughter and I was like, let's just go outside. And I was like, thank you, Patty. I'll see you tomorrow. I got in the car. The first person I called was Julian. So I called Julian. I let Bo and Molly know, but I called Julian and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is what happened. He goes, no way. He goes, well, I did have $200,000 for you, but since I thought you were okay, I, it was 100 of it was deployed somewhere else, but I can get you 109. I was like, cool. And I was like doing the math. I was like 109 paces, what I have liquid, because Bo and Molly were just like, just worry about acquiring it and we'll figure out the renovations later. And I'm like, okay. So Julian coordinated Roni and Owners Club and she just went ahead and wired the 109,000 right on in. And so we were able to close the next day because Julian helped me with Roni. I'd met Roni at Scottsdale. Well, I actually met Tracy, her sister, and Roni was always talking to someone else, and then session starts and you don't get a chance to speak to everyone. So I indirectly kind of met her. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, if Julian didn't make that call and if she didn't come through and do that, we wouldn't even be sitting here talking about this particular project. And so then we acquired it. And Julian's like, no worries, maybe we'll refinance, we'll figure something else out. And I was like, okay, no problem. And straight away, it was just a little bit difficult because it was a log cabin. And I was like, man, so then I was like putting my pitch deck together. I got a crash course in raising capital. And so I called Tigger and I was like, Tigger, can you look at this? What do you think of this? And she was like, yeah, let me take a look. And then the next day she was like, I think I have the money because I needed 150,000 for the renovations. And so then Tigger hooked me up with Danny Perez, who's also in Owners Club. And he and I had a Zoom and he's like, yeah, April, I'll fund this project. And I was like, oh my gosh, but it took several weeks for all of that to come into play. And so then he funded the renovations. We completed the renovation. We completed it on time. I came across some things in a log cabin because it's different, but it all ended up working out. I mean, there were some really long days and some really crazy hours and just crazy things we did to hit the mark. But here we are. It's listed and we got an offer within 7 days of being on market for 750,000. So we acquired it for 300, 150 in reno, and now we have a 750 all cash offer, waiving an appraisal.
Amazing!
What an amazing story! That's such a great story.
Yeah. It is a great story because number one, that is real estate. People think, oh, you buy a house, you just renovate it, you sell it. It's always something. There is always something that you're going to deal with. It seems like I just don't know of anything that goes just peachy keen.
Yeah.
That goes to show the power of networking and the power of joining an investors group.
Right.
So it never would have happened. It never would have happened without everyone's partnership. Like never. Yeah. So I'm just thankful that they were just willing to take a chance and not working with me before and not, just kind of having that in-person meetings that we've had and stuff. Yeah. So that really went a long, long way. And I mean, it's not lost on me because Pace was half my partner that helped too, but it was, it's still a risk. Like,
oh yeah.
That's a lot of money,
has the wherewithal Pace does if it goes south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a great story. Thank you for sharing that, April.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
That's so awesome. So I did have one other question back in the Portugal world. You said something about the agent. You talked to the agent about buying that ruins. And it's my understanding that in other countries, they don't have MLS similar to the way they do over here. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a little bit challenging. You're totally correct on that. You're right, not the MLS, but each brokerage has a website with listings. Like Century 21 is there, Remax is there. There's local companies that are there, but they have a website that's their version of Zillow, but it only has 20% of the capabilities or access to data. So it is very challenging. I can't tell how long something's been on market. And I can't tell certain things that I would typically know just from looking at Zillow, meaning the price history, when it was sold, comps, things like that. So what they do is each brokerage does a market analysis. And if you want to see the value of a property, you pay 14 euros and 90 cents, and they'll send you what the property's worth. So they can list it, and what it's worth are two different things. Now, it does take some strategic patience in Portugal, and whoever invests in Portugal, I would say be okay with a longer game than it would be here for sure.
Hmm.
That's just because of all of the holidays and all of the relaxation that they do. That's a part of it. And then the other
what we
part,
want to enjoy.
yeah. So,
that's like the best part.
yeah, and me being like a go American, especially in the Northeast, I feel like we're super intense over here in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
I'm like, I'll bring a team. I'll bring a team. I don't think that would go over well, so I have to.
They just say, "Here, have a glass of
Reel
wine."
it back.
Also, I like Kate. I like that.
They're
That's
just like
awesome.
3-hour lunches, no problem. And I'm like, I got stuff to do.
That's funny.
That's like being on island time. When you're on island time, everybody's like, "Oh, steps up, nobody's working."
Yeah.
And you do kind of, it does have an impact on you. I do experience much more chill when I'm there because no one else is hustling around. And so it kind of gives me permission to do that because I am just like a very action oriented person.
You're a go-getter for sure.
Yeah. So it's like, it's hard to turn that off. But there is a site that's kind of like Zillow that kind of aggregates most of the data, but you can't get you don't get the agent's email all of the time. Like sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, or the phone number. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And in order to submit a form, you have to have a Portuguese number. So I had to use my brother's number to even get a hold of someone. And sometimes they respond quickly, sometimes they don't. Like, for instance, I could send an email to my attorney or to my engineer and say, I'd like, a question about XYZ. It's not uncommon for them to take a week to respond. It's just the way it is, right?
Wow.
So,
what's the rush?
And the agents are
like a perfect business opportunity for a software development company to step in. Like Privy. Hey, Benson, are you watching? Sounds like a good idea to me.
Yes.
Listen, ladies, it's 8:00 and I hate to cut you off. April, this has been amazing. I would love to have you on again sometime. I'm sure the ladies would too. I am just floored with some of this information about investing in Europe, especially in Portugal. It's certainly opened my eyes to a lot of things I would have not thought of before. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And ladies, anything else before we cut out?
Well, is there anything we can do for you, April?
That's
what are you looking for? And can we send people your way? And what information, like do you have a YouTube channel or Instagram that people can reach out to you?
Yeah, so it's easy to find me. I'm at April Elias on all the socials. So Instagram, I'm really not on Twitter, but Instagram is probably the easiest way. And I do have a YouTube again. It's April Elias. And what I'm looking for, I don't know. It's changed. I guess maybe if somebody I was thinking of maybe like setting up a fund and figuring that out to invest in Portugal. So if somebody has access or resources or knows who I can talk to about that, to explore that further, that would be super valuable for me.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah. We'll see if we can get Catherine connect. She's supposed to be on next week with us, right?
Yeah, that would be great. That's a good idea, Donda.
She's a money gal, so maybe she'll have some ideas. We can ask her then.
I love that.
And are you looking to people to come to your event also local here in the US?
Yeah. So, to my event local in the US?
Sorry, I meant your event that anybody local in the US you want to go to Portugal or
Yes. Yes, I am. So I've completed my itinerary, my whole business plan for it. And so, but it is a super small group, and it's a super small group of just 8 total. And that's so we can get in and out and really have a good experience in Portugal, because it's hard to roll around. Even it's hard for me to roll around with 5 kids. It's difficult to get into. So it's I want everybody to have a good experience, but enough people to bounce ideas off of and brainstorm and ask questions. And so yeah, absolutely. And I'll be putting more information out about that, or people can just hit me up directly and we can have a one-on-one conversation, and I can go through what they can expect out of the experience.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome.
And do you know how to say thank you in Portuguese?
Obrigada.
Oh, that's right. Obrigada.
Mhm.
Got
And
it.
if you're a
Thank you,
guy, it's
Mexico.
obrigado. You use an O instead of an A. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Thank you. Obrigada for coming.
Yeah, obrigado.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
All right,
April.
ladies, have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Thank
April.
you.
Next week.
Bye.
Bye.